give it some time to figure itself out. Thank you guys for waiting. My name is Amelie, and you're watching Celestic Intelligence podcast. Today is episode 67. um, I've titled this one Brainrot Viral Movements, and Cultural Signals, and really kind of my assessment early on when the success, I have to just be really upfront and well, let me just do the introductions first. My name is Amelie. I'm the host creator of Celestic Intelligence podcast. And this podcast is really a platform for me to transmit information. Milk, get that milk. What else? Shut up, chicken. Um, I'm a millennial mother, and I have two children. The oldest is going to be 21 in a couple months, and then the youngest is going to be 14 this year. So I'm like right in the thick of this information, where I can read the signals of the youth, and I actually like root for the youth. Where some of the discussions that I'm going to be talking about today, they're not rooting for the youth. The adults are really kind of just being these boomers and really just raining on the parade, thinking that they're superior, really just kind of being resentful that they're aging. I don't know what the deal is, but anyhow, I was like, you know what? I'm going to do a stream on it. And when I hit stream 6, 7, that's when I'm going to do it. So that's what we're doing today. I've been on an arc. If you guys have been following me, I love you, blog dash R3V. Thanks for being here. Um, I love all of my subs and watchers and people who come on and participate in the conversation, and that's why I'm here. I've been listening to all this Gnosticism stuff this week, so it's really giving me this interesting perspective of unwinding things that I think are foundations and really just peeling it back and putting it back together of what is truth. So I'm definitely a truth seeker. Okay, so let's talk about it. 6, 7, brain rot. Um, so first and foremost, let's just open with this. Every generation believes the next generation is culturally doomed. Um, the millennials did it. Maybe the Gen Xers did it. What is it? The boomers and the silent generation. Going back millennia, every generation is just kind of concerned for the youth in their own special way. Mofaz, hello. How are you? Thank you guys for joining. Today is episode 6, 7. So please make sure that you sub, hit that like button. Helps my algorithm. It's something that you guys can do to support me, and it kind of keeps the energy moving. Um, so every generation believes the next generation's culturally doomed, right? But every generation also forgets, or maybe most of them forget, that they did deeply unserious things in public too. So we're going to be talking about viral movements throughout generations, and maybe some other like things that hit. And you know, for those of you millennials out there, you guys were out there doing the Macarena. Don't even lie. I know that you were. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. If you're saying okay to subbing, I appreciate that and liking. So let's talk about the core premise here of brain rot. So brain rot is nothing new. It's You're new here. Funny Rennie. Funny Remy 001. Hello. So um I think it was a few months ago. I was on uh, Substack. I was going to say subreddit, but that's not it. Substack, and uh, and I was reading this article by this lady. She was talking about the 6-7 movement. And she goes into like how doomed this generation is because they're all following these hidden signal orders to participate in this 6-7, right? That's the 6-7. If you do this, you know what I'm talking about. And she went on like it was, I don't even know how old this lady was. I want to say she's in my generation, but she was going off on um the new kids are doomed. They're all plugged in. They're all responding to these hidden messages in these memes. And so I'm reading through it, and she's just like comparing him to Hitler Youth and to whatever the Soviets were up to with their, kids that they had going on. And ultimately, it was like basically blaming the youth generation for um, even like following or participating in any of these viral movements, which is really what it was. And it was really fascinating to me because when I pulled back, I pulled back from what she was saying, and really what I was seeing was she didn't have the wherewithal to see that it was our responsibility to say no to digitalization of our life. And so all of the children that have been growing up, my children included, and me as a millennial, I got to see from beginning to now of what the digital age is and how it got integrated from the internet, email, e-commerce. Like I got to see a front row, like I was 16 in the year 2000, like when Y2K was going on. So still very much in my youth, but also like not knowing what was going to be happening, not knowing that we would be on these phones being able to have these transmissions like we're having today. And so, I was pulling back and I was like, really, what about this article is really jarring to me is that the adult in the room wasn't taking responsibility for what we have agreed to. And so I tried to convey that to her to her in her chat. And she was very defensive, obviously, because she really hadn't thought about the whole what position she was taking and how it was being reflected. I was like, you can't blame the youth for something that we've allowed to be created. Like we have responsibility here, so start taking some action in your responsibility to yourself and not blame the younger generation for doing what they do, okay? Um, she didn't see it that way. Whatever. Who cares? So let's just talk about brain rot. So I want to say that brain rot is not new. This is something that's been happening. What does celestic mean? Noah Simmons, celestic is kind of this, I I see it as this like soul kaleidoscope. Like we're shining in different areas, and celestic is like the 3D all the way up to this divine realm mixture of what we are as humans. So I look at it as just kind of a soul kaleidoscope. Um, so viral repetition, absurdity, okay, symbolic trends, slang, group mimicry, and youth coded language have existed forever. This is not anything new. In every era, there's something that's going on. In every era, I think of like every 15 years, every generation has um, its own little movement that's associated with it. And we'll get into some of that in a little bit. And then through every medium humans have ever had. So, Right now, we just happen to have this technology that is available in our hands, but in the past, it's been other methods. Music has been one of the things. So, um, what's changing right now as far as the delivery of the information is one is the speed. Right now, we can basically get stuff instantly. Like, even I still get blown away when I think about how Amazon works. I still get blown away when I think about how convenient it is to go to the grocery store, right? So there's a lot of these mechanisms, with speed being at the top one of, when a meme goes viral, like it goes globally, worldwide viral. Okay. The other thing that's changing right now from when I was a child, being a millennial, is the visibility. It wasn't until 2009 that the smartphone was created and available to the public. All right. So before the phone in 2009, everyone was using emails, everyone was using chat rooms to like deliver all of this information. And, the speed was, it was kind of getting there, but it wasn't like it is today where you can just go on to Instagram, go on to YouTube, go on to TikTok, and then all of a sudden you have all of the availability. You have the visibility, you have the speed, and then on top of that, with the technology and how it's progressing, we now have this amplification of the algorithm that directs it into different, like, you're basically like, they know what your demographics are and they know how to hit those algorithms, and based on the things that you watch, the our phones, like right now my phone is like listening to me, it's watching my movements, it's watching how much am I looking at it, and it knows all of that information. Okay. So the algorithm is gearing itself towards that. And especially with things like if you're using Alexa or Cortana or Siri, like these are all things that are when you're participating in that, you're participating in the algorithm, and it knows where to direct this information. So the chance of something becoming viral is really quick. Okay. Now, the next thing is the other thing that changes is the compression of the communication. So, we've gone from where it's been a lot of words, maybe a lot of information, to now it's just like these really quick memes. And like Vine was really big and it was very short. I think it was like, what, 30 seconds max? Um, Twitter, when it started, it was a certain number of characters, and yeah, it's gotten a little bit more, but we compressed it, and now we're kind of playing with how much of compression do we really want. So the internet, while it's a huge catalyst for culture, it didn't invent youth culture. All right, it just, in a way, it helped to industrialize. It's like a technological industrialization of culture is what we're seeing. And now we're seeing it across. I have a whole digital age series that I did last year, and I'll definitely start adding more to it as the summer comes up. But the industrialization of our world is in just in its digital sense and not in these iron and coal mines, right? It's just in a different way. It's kind of this repetition. And if you want to get more into that, definitely check out the Digital Age podcast. I don't think that I talk too fast. That 1.5 speed is too terrible. It is a lot of information, but it's very interesting to kind of see the progression. So I start from the internet all the way up to AI and beyond. All right. So there's a myth going around that this generation, for whatever it means, is cooked, all right? And it might be uniquely cooked because we now have the World Wide Web in the palms of our hands, literally. We're being tracked literally with these phones. And when I was a kid, I remember when I was like in my teens, the older generation really looking down on the younger generation. You guys are, I mean, we had the 90s grunge phase going on. We had all kinds of oddities. It was just kind of exploding from the 80s until the 90s. It was just, there was this unique explosion of, I don't want to say individuality, but there was definitely like these streams and camps where people were going into. So every era really says, like, oh, kids these days. Kids these days, they don't know anything. We know it all, blah, 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 blah. Every era has this element of the culture is collapsing when really it's just like their culture is collapsing. I imagine the boomers are just like rolling on. I mean, they are kind of. They're kind of rolling over thinking that, oh, everyone at like all the younger kids are cooked. Well, they, you know what? Not making any claims, but the boomers kind of cooked their own children just with the way that financially in America we're set up. Like they took advantage of a situation. So they talk about cultures collapsing. Well, who holds the responsibility here? Okay. Every era says attention spans are destroyed. I mean, I have opinions about what attention span is and why it can get destroyed. And it doesn't necessarily mean that technology is the only thing that is destroying that. I think that that is a part of it. Oh, hi, Deborah. It seems to me Amazon is a repeat of the Sears catalog. You look, you buy it, and then a delivery guy delivered to your door. Easy returns. That's interesting. Very interesting. Sears catalog. Yeah. I mean, there really isn't anything new under the sun. It's just like we have different mechanisms of kind of playing around with the energetics of it. It used to take 4 to 6 weeks to get a thing. You know, you'd get the catalog, you'd cut it out of the magazine, and you'd send your money, and you're like, oh my gosh, I hope it comes to me. And then eventually, like, you'll forget about it. And then, you know, or maybe you're checking the mail all the time and you're like, oh, it hasn't come yet, it hasn't come yet. And then all of a sudden it comes and you're like, oh, that was amazing. And then I don't know what it was because I didn't participate too much in that, but yeah. Every era also says language is degrading. Okay, and we'll talk about the 1920s, the flapper era. Um, Definitely an interesting time then. But all in all, humanity keeps on moving. Okay, so people keep on, it keeps on going. The cycle keeps on going. All right. So in the Roaring Twenties, there was this jazz panic. Okay, they all thought it was super evil. Um, Provocative dancing. You know, before dancing was very much ballroom dancing. It was not provocative at all, at least in European and American culture. The provocative dancing started with these, you know, speakeasies and having these elite parties. Like our what we're going through now, I often think about what people in the 1910s, 1920s were going through, where, you know, they're kind of in between war. You know, the Second World War hadn't started and the Great Depression hadn't happened yet. And, um, you know, there's almost this like juxtaposition of poor to rich. And we're kind of experiencing that now. But I really don't think it ended. Like, I think that's just always there. And it kind of, you know, maybe the Monopoly game ends every once in a while, but everything just kind of starts over from the beginning. And then it kind of goes through another succession of whatever that generation is. Okay. They had bizarre slang. If you've ever heard the bee's knees, like that came from the 1920s. The cat's pajamas came from the 1920s. Like those are very interesting. Like I remember reading through a lot of the slang and I was like, oh, you know, a lot of this stuff we still use. But back then, like that was just a unique way of being a little rebellious. So they had that bizarre slang, that rebellious youth identity, and that was the 1920s. Like it, if we're looking back and thinking, oh, it was so good back then. Well, everybody has their own generational rebellion. The next recent era is the 1950s. So in the 1950s, there was this Elvis panic, and hopefully you guys have all heard of Elvis and know who Elvis is. And the Elvis panic was, his dancing. And then the rock and roll panic was happening. Like, oh my gosh, rock and roll is so evil. And, now we look back at it very much differently. And it's just an interesting comparison when we're looking at today's youth to that similar rock and roll panic, that similar Elvis panic where he was gyrating his hips and it was just so scandalous, right? Um, and in the 1950s, there were also fears about how that rebellion and the sexuality of that generation were shifting, so definitely shifted. There definitely is a lot of things from the 1950s that weren't necessarily good to go to come out of it, but that there was also just, when it comes to youth and rebellion, it's just going to be there. Like we're going to have that happen, which is kind of what we're seeing now. And when I look at how teenagers today are rebelling, the big part of me is like, you kids go, like, rebel hard. I don't think they're rebelling hard enough, honestly. Like, I don't think that the viral movements, the memes, I don't think it's rebelling enough, right? I think there needs to be more rebellion from the youth to stand up against what's going on and shift it because it's their future. The next era we're going to talk about is the 80s and 90s. So we were talking about the Macarena. The Macarena. It wasn't just Elvis. And I don't know what that means, pro charged 377LX. You can certainly say something before we get into the 80s and 90s, Ghost Rider. So the 80s and 90s, they had the Macarena. There was a lot of catchphrase culture. There was very much prank culture. I don't know if you guys ever watched what's the show called? Um, I know Pranked and Jackass was huge. I remember that was huge back in my day. Kids today are not tough, so they can't rebel. They don't know how. Well, maybe. I think that's why I said they need to rebel more. They need to rebel more. But there's so much, like, we can say that, but if we were raised in the way that they have been, where there's almost this big brother is watching you energy with the kids, because it really is. Big brother is always watching you. There's CC cameras everywhere. They go to school where everything is kind of oddly monitored and locked up while they're in there. They're not allowed to have cell phones in school. It's almost like there's just a lot of weird things that make it more difficult to rebel than what, like, my generation was. I told my son, when I was in he's in eighth grade, getting ready to promote. When I was in eighth grade, I mean, I was getting straight A's, but I was a little hellion. Like, my teachers, I feel bad for them right now because I was like not nice at all. Um, rebel with their Crocs. Yeah, I don't get the Crocs, man. I don't understand that, but maybe I'm just whatever. But anyways, the 80s and 90s, they had this prank culture. Crank yankers were calling phones and like pranking. Um, and it was like there wasn't this traceability like there is today. There's this like huge traceability. And so doing pranks and all that stuff is, it's almost like there's something or somebody always watching you. So you're like quick to get caught doing those things. The 80s and 90s, they had mall culture. Going to the mall was like a thing. And then the the introduction of MTV and these repetition loops where you're listening to the same song over and over and over again, um, but in this like new digital form with music videos, right? So people have always repeated ridiculous things together. It's just now we have these archives of the internet and, other technology that is recording everything. So we get to, it's not like, oh, somebody tripped on a banana peel. It's like somebody tripped on a banana peel and I got it on video, and now I'm going to post it to YouTube and the whole world can come and look at it if they want to, right? So we have this like we have the weirdness and these phases of life that were happening. They just weren't happening like we were sharing stories verbally of, oh, remember when we went on vacation and that funny thing happened, or remember in school when this funny thing happened. we it used to be we had to like communicate that one to one or one to a group, and now it's like one to the whole world if the whole world cares to watch it. So people like uh Logan Paul and Mr. Beast and PewDiePie, I'm trying to think of some big like YouTube names, have millions of followers, right? And they're doing their own silly, pranky, viral thing that they're doing, um, which is interesting. Like, I'm not going to go into it, but it is an interesting thing to also look and pan out and look at what that is. But with all these cultures, all these eras, um, each era had its own thing. So we're just kind of in this one right now. So let's look a little bit more at the 6-7 discourse, the current moral panic. Mike's in the house. I haven't seen you in a while. Well, thank you, Ghost Rider, for coming in and watching. I appreciate it. Um, so I made it's kind of like this Alfredo sauce. I always make I make most of my sauces from scratch, except for sometimes spaghetti sauce because I just don't have the time. So it's easier to make a quick dinner. But um, I really like broccoli Normandy, which has broccoli, carrots, and cauliflower. And so I made this Alfredo sauce with penne, and I added peas and a broccoli Normandy to it with chicken. My son, I think he's going through a huge growth spurt. Like, he just won't stop eating. It's just incredible. I'm like, I'm at that age, but it's the last time. But I'm just like, oh my gosh, can't make food fast enough for this kid. Okay. Um, so the 6-7 meme, I was talking earlier about um, that lady who wrote that Substack. I came on. I don't know why I want to say subreddit, but she wrote in her Substack that and made a claim that the youth meme was evidence of indoctrination, evidence of symbolic manipulation, and paralleled it to this historical authoritarian youth movement. So just various youth movements in the past. And it was really unsettling to me. And it wasn't the kids necessarily that I was really unsettled by, of like, oh my gosh, the kids are. Like they're gonna be Hitler Youth. I was not thinking that. Um, but it was really just the adults. So like I do acknowledge that there is a power structure that exists. Okay, so I'm not negating that. Um, there's definitely algorithms that are shaping behavior. I know that my algorithms even catch me outside. The algorithms that I have are geared towards like my, my gender, my age, the fact that I'm American, like they know what I'm looking at and they know what to like to feed into my ad space. And so those algorithms can shape behavior, especially if it's like hitting these dopamine loops. So if you're getting like I'll hit a dopamine loop every once in a while. My recent dopamine loop, and I'll be straight up, is true crime documentaries. Like 20 minutes, 2 hours, it doesn't matter. Like I'm listening to what is the psychology behind this crazy person and why did they do it and what is going on with people that darkness is exposing itself in this way. So I do get hit in some algorithms and dopamine loops of like, oh my gosh, and then this, and oh my gosh, and then that. Thankfully, that's like going away. But they do shape behavior. They do gather your attention. Okay, and then digital environments will affect the consciousness of everyone. So in my podcast, I like to remind us all the time that emotionally we entrain to others. And with the internet, it's essentially this huge, I don't want to say it's like completely just the internet, but it is a part of this synthetic nervous system that is being technologically built and it's connecting to us. So Elon Musk talks about you need to merge with technology or merge with machines in order to not be obsolete. Well, buddy, we already are. Like we already are tied to the technology, even if we don't think that we are. Like I dare you to lose your cell phone and then live for a whole month, which is basically what I did at the beginning of the year. I lost my phone. It was an accident. Like it fell out of my bag on my way to work. Couldn't find it. I retraced my steps, couldn't find it. And I sat without a phone for, I don't know, a good 2 weeks. And I was taking a little bit of a break from podcasting, anyways, but it really opened my eyes to like how connected am I to my phone and the devices that I have around. We do online banking now. We do basically everything online. We pay our bills online. Like we can still do it the old fashioned way, but it's becoming more and more difficult to do that. I love you so much from America, uh, Mizami. I don't know how to say that, but thank you for watching from Malaysia. Is laughing over here because you need to analyze what you're watching. I know I'm analyzing what I watch. Um, I can't help it. Sometimes I'm just like, oh, I wonder what's kind of twisted things that person doing. What are they up to? Just curiosity, and knowing like human dynamics. But it's not the only thing I watch. I'll get on to other benders where it's just like I'm going like right now I'm in my dopamine loop of Gnosticism. I'm just like completely figuring out what is an archon, what is a what is I don't know all the things of it, but funny Remy, I'd really love to be your friend. Aw. Uh, where was I? Oh yeah, I was talking about my dopamine loops of what I watch. Anyways, maybe we'll talk about it in another stream, but Okay, where were we? So yeah, we're talking about the culture panic of the 6-7 movement. Okay. And I'm not worried about the kids. In fact, I think the kids are doing great. Honestly, I think that they're doing fantastic. Given their what they're working with. They're doing amazing. I love being around the kids. They make me happy, they make me smile. There's nothing boomer that I look at them and like, "Oh, I don't know why they're doing that." Like I have no judgments whatsoever. I'm just like rooting for them. I'm like, "You guys got this." Some of them maybe not, but most of them I think they're going to overcome whatever is going to be in the future. Like they're just prepared to manage that. Okay. So I guess I really with the article that I read, really the massive difference that I want to really lay out there is that yes, there is influence that's happening on the youth. All right. But there's a difference between the influence and then scapegoating children and saying that they're part of this like authoritarian movement. And I was really offended by that actually. And I was like, don't talk about my children like that, okay? I may not have had 3.2 children, but I had two children. And that's a lot more than a lot of the other women my age have. And I'm not saying anything against that. But if we're going to be maintaining a population of people on this planet, you're not going to do it by having less than one kid. We like if we're going to be like we're going to see depopulation be a huge thing, not in the not too distant future. Would really love to be your friend. You like flowers? I do like flowers. You are a beautiful girl in the world. Thank you. All right. Um so the projection problem is the next portion of this. So um and this happens in every era. I'm not pointing at any certain generation right now. I'm just pointing at this is something that happens and this is what I'm analyzing at the moment is many adults are projecting their own unresolved fears, okay? Their own unresolved fears into the youth. This is especially after lockdown years, so we forget like the kids went through that and whatever level their parents or adults or guardians were participating in that, even people that were not related to them, in wearing masks, being afraid of other people, like really just ingraining these things culturally. Like I think that was more harmful than spreading memes. Okay. um Many adults are projecting their unresolved fear onto the youth after this digital acceleration. Okay. Like I said, since 2009, we've had smartphones. Okay. I think that has a lot more to do with the youth than like a viral movement that they copy and laugh about and joke about. Um, we've had a lot of institutional distrust, and that is building and building and building right now to where there is definitely a contraction period happening right now. I'm watching it live. Okay, watching it in live time. Um, the adults are projecting, especially after social fragmentation. So, social fragmentation wasn't just during the lockdown, this has been happening with how we interact with each other socially from a full on whatever our life scale is. Like, most of us only have relationships, and I might be one of those people with whoever we're working with at work. That's how we meet people in our lives. And yeah, I have my child. I have, a handful of friends. It's not that I don't have people to talk to, but in my immediate social circle, there's not a lot of people. It's maybe 10 people that I interact with. So there is definitely a lot of social fragmentation happening. Is it affecting me negatively? No. Like, I love talking to people. I love connecting with people. And that's why I have my podcast, is because I love transmitting ideas and having discussions and conversations about things that I find interesting. And people are going to find it, or if they don't like it, they can go find another channel. There's plenty of channels on YouTube, plenty of channels on TikTok and Instagram, and a whole rainbow of options for you to choose from. I'm very happy that you're here. If this information is like interesting to you, then that's great. Let's continue the conversation. Um, the other unresolved fear that is being projected onto the youth is this mass nervous system exhaustion, and I think this is really underplayed. And I'm glad to hear that in different areas that I see this having a little bit more elevated of a discussion. But from my estimation, and this is not like firm numbers, it's just kind of um, just an estimation, is about 30 to 40% of people that are in the workforce that are going through life right now, they're completely burnt out. They're completely burnt out. And so those burnt out people are going to find the easiest way to like direct their energy. And a lot of the times it's projecting onto others the problem so that they don't have to look at themselves in the mirror. Okay. And that's what I'm seeing, is that projection of, it's the youth, it's this institution, it's that institution. It's always outside of themselves instead of themselves, which is why I have the Celeste Intelligence podcast here, because we're talking about how are we with our own inner world? How are we managing that? All right. So instead of processing the grief, the complicity that they have in these systems, and processing the uncertainty of the fact that we're in this like odd threshold period of time that is just really unique, um, that's really what they're avoiding and running away from. If the adults start processing their grief, they start processing their complicity. I credit I credit you having 10 people. Thank you. Do you think that older generations had burnout? If so, do you think it's worse now or back then? Absolutely, I think they did have burnout. Imagine it's 1895 and the union isn't even a thing. And you have a huge family that relies on you. Your wife stays home, you go out, and you're working from sun up to sundown. And that's all you do. And that's how you feed your family. Like, that'll burn you out for sure. Processing someone's life is impossible. um I don't think that there's a level of exhaustion and burnout that would be like better or worse. It's just this is what we're dealing with in our current timeline right now. We have things a lot easier. We're not out toiling in the fields. We have huge machines that do that. And thank you, I don't know that I necessarily want to eat Monsanto, but it's there in case that, if you need it, you can get it. You can't process 1895 when you're living in 2026. Well, if we're comparing it though, we can compare it. I mean, people were getting killed by wolves. They were getting, like, their crops would fail. Like, there was a lot more sensitivity in the way that they were living. And it was still a hard life. Like, I imagine, what I'm thinking of right now is somebody that lives in a prairie, and or they're trying to travel from Cincinnati to San Francisco. Like, there's a lot of difficult challenges in that kind of a life. The life expectancy was not what it is today. So, yeah. Anyways, good question. I think now we have not just our physical world and our inner world that we're mapping out, and I talk about this quite a bit, Mike, is now we have the digital world that's kind of increased the mental load and the mental capacity to, like, deal with life. So, like I said, nothing in the world has changed. There's nothing new under the sun. It's just the way the environment is put together is different. All right. Let's talk about digital folklore versus actual indoctrination. All right. So we have kids repeating memes, and kids repeating memes are not automatically engaging in ideological conditioning. They're not automatically engaging in some sort of ritual invocation, which a lot of people went straight to the gematria of the 6-7 movement. And they're not automatically engaging in this symbolic warfare. They're not fodder for, other systems. Now, is there a they? Well, possibly. Like, right now, I'm going through this huge spiritual unwind of certain religious texts, and how I've come to understand them, and maybe I've come to understand them incorrectly. And so I'm like unwinding all of that and putting it back together. But children are not like out there doing that. Now, is there a they, like some demonic spirits or, you know, rulers of this world that have some effect on it? Possibly. But I just don't see that being like automatically engaged in that kind of warfare. Okay, I'm saying that people were scared. Well, and that's really what it is there's a lot of fear, and that really is what the survival adaptation is like we're going through life, and about 30-40% of people are terrified, and they're so frozen, or how would I say this? They're so anchored in fear that they've become so it's normal to them. So they'll continue sitting in that fear and still like doing the motion. So there was a viral video of a woman, and she's like basically in tears, and she's like, I get up, I go home, I get up, I go to work, I go to sleep. I get up, I go home, I'm gonna go to sleep. And she's like, what am I doing in my life? Just having this like serious crises of conscious of what am I doing? Why am I doing this? And what is the point of me continuing this loop? And she was looking at like almost confronting her fear, and then figuring out, why am I continuing to live this way? And it was around the same time that I was having my own, like, what the heck am I doing? Like, getting up, going to work, going to sleep for this? Like, it was like, it didn't feel good. My body was like, I was basically going on a roller coaster of just breaking down my body, and my health was suffering, and I was like, "You know what? I'm just done. I'm over it." Like, I'm just unplugging from whatever this situation is, and I'm going to figure out something else to do. And so now here I am, years later, doing something else, a lot more conscious of what I'm doing. I know that I, go to work. I know that I'm, renting this home. I know what I'm participating in, grocery stores, the supply chain. I know I have a lot more visibility and a lot more consciousness in the realm of what I'm doing. What am I doing different? I have this podcast. What am I doing different? I'm doing a lot of inner healing, but then also externally in my body healing as well, to come to whatever individuation I can in my own lifetime. Okay. All right. So the most viral youth culture functions more like what we would call folklore. So earlier I was talking about how, in the past, when something would happen, we would share that story. Like there's a story that I like to share with my son of there was a time where I pulled a prank on my brother, and I like loosened the pepper, and he poured it all over his mac and cheese. And my mom had just made it, and we were all kids. My mom had just made it, and me and my brother were snickering, thinking it was so funny. And she blew the heck up. Well, years later, my brother, who I was snickering with, not the one that I pulled the prank on, he was like, "Oh yeah, you remember she was biting plates," and so I was sharing that, just like a little, it was exaggerated. It was very grossly exaggerated story of a situation that happened when I was a kid, because kids love hearing like family stories that are funny like that. And so I was sharing with him, and now it's just like this funny meme that we have now. It's just like whenever you get angry, you bite a plate, and it's kind of like the dishes are done, man. Or um, I know that there's another like funny dish breaking. I'm doing the dishes, and this kid's like throwing dishes out the window or whatever. Funny. Okay, so viral youth culture is functioning in the same way that we would have these folklore stories, inside jokes, tribal language, social bonding, right? When kids are like, oh, yeah. I'm trying to think of, there's so many silly things that they are doing right now. My son just like makes up all of these really funny catchphrases. And so we have our own interesting, like, inner family language with each other. And that's our way of socially bonding. And then there's also nervous system regulation through this humor. So the humor is kind of what is bonding us together as a community and a society. And that's how the culture is continuing to move. We just get to see it now in this expansive algorithm, like shooting out of the internet into all the different areas of the world. And it's basically what you can call hyper speed folklore. Okay. So that's really what is kind of at the base of this. Memes are simply compressed cultural signals that are going off, and maybe we don't understand it. And it's the youth's way of kind of switching it up. And that's what they're there for. When we were young, we were doing the same thing. It's just we were doing it in our own way with whatever mechanisms that we had. We were all doing that little silly, like, three-line S. What's it called? There's a name for it. We were all playing, like, making the little masho, playing masho. What else were we doing? We just had like little different things that we did, and even different school systems, they still had this same, like, when things were shared, we were sharing it as fast as possible. It just wasn't hyperspeed like it is today. And then memes are shorthand communication. It's a quick way to get a message to, you know, in an image in a really short couple of words. I think of Pepe, Pepe being, kind of, I have Pepe. He's around here somewhere. Oh, I got a couple Pepe meme dudes in my that somebody painted for me. I was like, oh, I love that meme, that Pepe gif. I love that Pepe. I want evil Pepe, like put them on a thing. And so it's kind of this shorthand communication. It's an image and maybe like, oh, my response in a few minutes behind your thoughts. I was dirt bike riding. Oh, when you were younger. And then memes are also like a symbolic participation. All right. So when we're sending around memes, it's just they're symbols, they're quick words, like I said, and then they're just compressed way of like sending this information out quickly and understanding it. Like if you see a meme, like my son will try, and he does get me sometimes, like catch. Right now, we're recycling like early 2010s things. So the Cash Me Outside girl, Cash Me Outside, how about that? Um, we definitely like make jokes about that. So this is the digitalization of folklore, this high speed, hyperspeed folklore that we're working through. Didn't Pepe get canceled? Of course, Pepe was always canceled. Did he get canceled? I'm behind then. I'm behind it. I still have my evil Pepe and I still have my coffee Pepe and I don't care. Nobody can cancel my Pepe. So really at the base of this, like every repeated phrase is not some sort of psychological operation, okay? It's just right now the mechanism of sharing information is so quick and so fast. Um I remember when the Marco Hine came out and then Gangnam Style, do you guys remember that? Like these things like took over the world. Like everybody was doing it. Everybody's doing the Macarena, and that was in the 90s, I want to say. And then in the 2000s, we had um, the Gangnam Style like came out, and that was just like it blew up. And then the 6-7, like when I think of 6-7, I'm thinking of those types of viral movements that happened. We're just having these newer viral movements now. So, if we're going to be, I'm going to talk about why this Hitler Youth comparison is a fail. Okay. Historical authoritarian movements involved state enforcement. There's no state enforcement here. These are all like we're all agreeing to participate in these systems. Um, the youth movement also included ideological training. There was some sort of training continued. Pepe because he stalked her and touched her a lot. Oh. There were punishment structures that were also involved in this, and then centralized doctrine was also a part of it. And when we're looking and comparing that to a viral meme, for example, the viral meme is not equal to authoritarian grooming. All right. Really, what kind of grooming is going on when you're sharing 6-7? And the way that I see my son using it is like just being silly and like being silly and really kind of confused. I think it's like more confusing the older generations in, like, I don't even know what's going on. Half the time I don't even know what's going on, but I get clued in on, like, certain things because I have a child of that age. But I can imagine, if you're in your 40s and you're like seeing this and you're just straight up confused, like, yeah, it does make sense to be confused. And that's kind of the purpose of it, is to just be as viral and goofy as possible, which is great. I think that children should be embracing their youth and having the best time. All right. If we're doing historical comparisons of these viral memes, viral movements, it almost like, if we're doing comparisons, it's carrying this implication. And I don't appreciate that because I care about my child. I care about the children of that generation. I care about them and then their generations. And so having this historical comparison implying that there's somehow going to be um, a part of a movement that's going to kill millions of people is, I don't appreciate that. So I'll just say that as a mother, I want to protect the children and allow them to have their goofiness and allow them to express themselves in their own ways, especially if it's not harmful to them or others. Like, there's really little harm in sharing a 6-7 meme or any other memes for that. Like, there's not a lot of harm that goes into that. There are harmful, definitely harmful things, but that one I just don't see as that. I feel like there's no comparison. We are out of control as a country of immediate information. Yeah, but it does have, I mean, it can be compressed, and there it's the cultural signal. It's like the transmission of the whole people. So you got your little generations of people that are like submitting signals, and it's just their own internal signals. And right now it's just amplified because we can plug into this nervous system that we might call the internet, that I call just technology in general. We can plug into it and it amplifies. It's like having it's just amplified, it's expanded. There's a lot of misinformation. Yeah, there is that too. So when I was analyzing this dissenting individual on Substack and who was talking about the 6-7 meme, I kind of had to laugh because, we were kind of raised in this generation, and I think it's still just, I think that this is one of the greatest bands of all time, Pink Floyd. But I think about Pink Floyd and Another Brick in the Wall, and how it was talking about, the older generations that were kind of beating the school age children, and how ironic it is that now, a couple generations later, we're kind of almost facing that same dynamic. um that older generation, the another brick when Another Brick in the Wall came out, there was a lot of rebellion going on then. And so these older generations were warning about institutional conditioning and like this creative suppression and thought control. And these are all like topics that were being very much targeted, um, that the World War II had affected the children of that generation, and they were just like speaking out about it. I enjoy your intelligence. I think we're in trouble as a society. I don't know. I think we're doing great. We're going exactly where we need to go as a society. 6, 7. Plus, the children couldn't have any pudding. I know. How can you eat your meat? How can you have your pudding if you're not going to eat your meat? Okay, so um, these generations are now panicking about the youth when the youth is developing culture outside of their own adult comprehension. Okay. This isn't entirely hypocrisy, but it's a part of the fear that is kind of embedded, that if we're not going to address these fears, we're going to keep looping in these, it's going to loop where it's going to loop. I come online, I transmit because I feel that even if one person can come out of fear from listening to these broadcasts and really look at themselves and start generating a really good transmission or a really good signal within themselves, that it's worth it. It's worth it for me to come on and chat about these things. Because really, what it is the fear of facing themselves, fear of, the, really just kind of living in this avoidance, and all of these other fears that we're not even addressing, grief that we're not processing, complicity because of our doing nothing to change the world. And really, I really like my tea. The last time I was on, my tea said, be the change that you want to see in the world. What does that even mean? Are we even looking at that in any seriousness? Because it really does come down to how are we being our own sovereign beings? How are we maintaining our agency? Are we giving it away? And yeah, I do give mine away, and I know where I'm giving it away to. I shop at grocery stores. I use Amazon. I go to work every day, and I still participate in the supply chain economy that we have right now. But we really just need to kind of come to that awareness of who am I, how am I interacting in the world, and is it the way that I feel, how I would feel fulfilled to be reacting in the world. What's my fear? Uh, Today I'm drinking Tulsi Moringa tea from Organic India. Tulsi it's holy basil, and it's supposed to help calm and relax. And then the moringa, I was reading, I don't know if there's any truth to this, but maybe there is. But the moringa is supposedly able to help get rid of the microplastics in your body. So I drink the moringa. It's pretty good. What's my fear? I'm sure I have fears. Right now, I'm overcoming a fear of my own physical health, and my body's been telling me to go work out, and I've been ignoring it probably for the last 4 years, and just not doing anything, or doing things, but not like with any discipline and regimen. And so I joined a gym and I started strength conditioning. And it's not that I hadn't been doing things. Like, I like to go dancing, and I like to go for walks, hikes. I ride my bike. I commute to work on my bike. So, not that I'm not getting out and doing things. But yeah, I don't know what that would be a fear of, but there is definitely a fear of like my health declining because I'm not taking care of this and taking it seriously. And so I think that would be my number one fear right now. I hope you reach your goals. Me, I hope you reach your goals too. All right, let's see. At some point, I need to finish my chat. Okay, I got what, three, four. All right, let's see if we can bust it. Bust it. So let's talk about why older generations get triggered. So this is the psychological part of this. So what is really being confronted when these viral memes come up, these cultural signals are transmitting, and the older generations are like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on with these kids?" Um, what they're being confronted with is aging. So they're kind of getting into this fear of death scenario, which is what all fears boil down to, really. So they're being confronted with their aging, their loss of being central, their culture being the center of attention. They're being confronted with the changing symbolic language. Back in the day, we had our own way of saying stuff, and now like we're watching it kind of morph, and we're just being the new generation is like, there's a meme where the millennials like, how is it 2026? I'm only 25. I'm only 25 years old. Like, you still feel young, but like you're not young. Like, no, you're not the young anymore. Um, and then unfamiliar codes, just not being in the know of all the things that are going on, not being able to keep up with all of um, the language that's being come up with, the memes that are like spreading, and all of that. So when adults no longer understand what language is being spoken, they might interpret that as confusion, which leads to them being in danger. So every generation invents a dialect the older generation initially reject. Dude, when OK Boomer came out, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so funny. That's good. It was about 10 years ago now. Maybe not so much 10 years, but it feels like that. So the real difference now is we have algorithms. So while there is concern, um, so it's not entirely a fake concern, we have these algorithms. So I just want to repeat, we've got this amplification system, which is the internet and social media. Um, this these viral memes do monetize attention. Okay, attention is, I would say, the most valuable currency that you have right now, which is why I make sure that you understand what are you giving up your agency over, because that's really going to help you center in what am I paying attention to. I like that you ask questions, Ghostwriter. Um, what else has changed is we have endless stimulation loops, so we're able to just go on to YouTube and scroll the reels. And then we also have algorithmic enforcement. So not only do we have amplification, we also have this algorithmic enforcement that is like sharing it. So if you're watching something, it's going to share the feed, and we've got hashtags. We're just basically tagging everything, so that it's kind of getting fed to you. So the trends now spread instantly, globally, and continuously, and they're always available for you to find somewhere on the internet. And I talk about this in my podcast all the time, but the constant stimulation can cause fragmentation, and it can fragment attention, And yes, that might feed into some sort of attention deficit that you're having, because now instead of being able to focus on these one things, like when I was a kid, if I was going to read and if I was going to get information, it had to be like read from a newspaper, magazine, a book. There was not anything online that we had access to until probably about the late 90s. I mean, we had TV too, but um, that for me, that didn't come until I was well into my teens that I was able to like access watching South Park and uh, after school cartoons. But Comedy Central had come online. Like um, we just have like had that, and there was almost this social agreement that when you're watching it, and you go to school or you go to work, you're talking about what you've watched. So that was very much from like my mid teens up until my mid 20s. That was definitely like the era. And then when social media came out, I remember I didn't want a Facebook account. It was 2009. And was working with this guy, and he's like, just get a burner account, but like sign up so that he was playing this game, Mafia Wars or something like that. Anyways, they had all these goofy things that, you know, it was kind of pulling from emails. And so you can like join these things. So it was like double entendres, and you can play these games like Candy Crush had come out, and maybe that was later. Oh, was it Mafia Wars or something like that? Anyways, that was like the early social media, before it became what it is now. So the here is not memes existing. It's the issue is just uninterrupted stimulation in environments. Talking by the water cooler. Yep. Talking by the water cooler. Talking by the coffee pots. Figuring out what was going on. Talking about the shows you were watching. It was fun. All right, I'm going to skip over. Because I'm getting tired. I've actually started this. I was very exhausted. Um, I did a pretty. It wasn't super intense, but I can definitely feel a little bit more tired from moving around a lot. Um, but let's talk about from my mother's, like my me being a mother perspective. As a millennial mother of both a Gen Z and a Gen Alpha, the narratives that frame children as morally suspect by participating in these memes or whatever online, um, for the children just merely adapting to the digital world that we as adults normalized and enforced by our participation, like I take exception to that. So really, it's this is a call to, um, just be aware of your complicitness in building this digital world. All right, it's not going away now. Like the cat's out of the bag. So we have to learn, how are we going to navigate it individually? How are we going to navigate this world? And it's not to take it out on the youth. That's completely like silly to me. And like I said, I take exception to that because my son is very creative, he's very funny, very adaptive. He has a unique perspective on the world, and he participates in all of these memes. He's very much into being online. And um, from a mother's perspective, do not see a lost generation. I see children that are learning to survive this unprecedented saturation of information, and they're doing a fantastic job of it. And it's not just my son. I observe like other children around his age. I know a lot of children, and I'm watching the youth and how are they interacting with that, because I'm very hard. I have very like intense mother energy, and like I care about their well-being. I care about the generation that is going to be moving into whatever the next realm is, and I'm going to be doing anything in my power, energetically, verbally, any transmission that I can give and feed and help somebody. I'm going to do that because I care about their future, and I'm not sitting here idly by just watching it and observing. I'm actively participating in how can I be a better person so that my next generation it is able to hold themselves better than like I was. I hate when jerks disrespect people on their streams. I just want to jump through the screen and lay them out. I think the hardest job in the world is being a mother, 24/7, 7 days a week. Yeah, it's, I mean, just being a human is a really hard job sometimes. Um, and it's been an interesting couple of years. I started my podcast, I started in 2022, and I think like 2 months into it, I think I only had like six or seven episodes in, and then my mom was diagnosed with brain cancer. And then, over the following 2 years, I just put everything on hold because, whatever. Maybe it's, I don't know. Well, I'll never know why those things happened, but they did happen for a specific reason. And now, comparing myself from 2022, 2023 me to me now, I definitely have grown a lot. I definitely hold myself a lot better. I definitely love myself a lot more. And so, in being able to love myself, I'm able to hold now this whole youth generation in so much love and in esteem, and watch them grow and adapt and really just kind of figure out, how do we interface with this world? How are we moving through it? And I think they'll get it. I think they'll get it. And the world's changing. Like, we have little control over the direction of energy and the way that it goes sometimes. We can only just really just focus on what we have here and work on this here. And then once we do that, everything kind of like gets a lot easier. Okay. So ultimately, if accountability is required, it belongs upward through the age ladder, not downward towards the youth. Okay. If we're going to be accountable, we need to be accountable for the world that we created right now and that we're creating right now. And I still think 6'7" is silly. I still don't understand why it's so funny, but it's funny. Um, Anyhow, I think I'm getting really tired. I'm honest that I am surprised I even made it. But thank you so much for watching. Make sure that if you've made it this far, that you, one, subscribe to my channel, two, like, and if you feel so led, leave a comment, even if it's a thumbs up, an emoji, even if you're angry about the podcast topic, go ahead and do that. I go live every Tuesday at 5:30 Pacific Daylight Time because that's what we're in right now. And I genuinely appreciate you, my audience. Thank you guys so much for paying attention. Thank you for participating. Good at Ghost Rider. It was good to see you. Mike, as always, my homie. Thank you for always showing up and being here, and everyone else. Um, I've been thinking that maybe I should do like have a cell phone call in where people can leave voice messages. And I'm not going to play them all if people are going to be really gross and weird, but I will field questions. I'm just kind of like playing with how that might look. I think that would be kind of fun to have like a call in segment for the show. And I just feel like changing up the dynamic of the the podcast. So throwing that out there. Still working on my computer situation. It's a work in progress. Um, but as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Until I see you again next time, have a lovely week. I might go on the weekend. We'll see. It's a 3-day weekend, and see how I'm feeling. Thank you so much. Have a good evening. Bye.